Number 6 is the people in charge of security at school and work and stadiums and stores. They have my best interests in mind.
So this kind of goes to what we were talking about with the police, right? About how the police are responsible for public safety, but they're not responsible for your personal safety. And I think when we think in terms of schools or our workplace or the mall or, the movie theater or what have you, they're looking to protect their own interests first. So there's a big thing, especially with workplaces and especially with schools especially, where there is a difference between accountability and survivability. Schools want to make sure that they can tell the parents where their children are, but they do so at a detriment to their survivability by keeping them all contained. One of the things I talk about in the book is that that old Billy Joel song, the Cold War kids were hard to kill under their desk in an air raid drill, as if being under your desk in an air raid is going to help keep you safe. It's not. But what it does is allows the teachers to know who died because the seating chart is on file with the central office. And so they could identify, who had perished in that attack because they knew which child was under which desk. Same thing with, stop, drop, and roll. Like if you're alone and on fire in your kitchen, like stop, dropping, and rolling is not going to help put the fire out. It's only going to help feed the flame. But if you're in a school setting or if you're in a social setting, stop, dropping, and rolling is a great thing to do because one, it puts you down on the ground so that others can come to either spray you with a fire hose or put blankets on you or allow you to get the first attention or the first aid attention that you need. And it also keeps you from spreading that fire everywhere else. If you're running like a maniac in the movies where, you're running around the kitchen and you're catching the drapes on fire and you're catching the rug on fire and you're catching this and that and the other thing. So it's all about like keeping that threat contained. So it's very important to understand the difference between survivability and accountability. Same thing like in a mall or in a workplace or in a store where the camera systems and the security systems are there to protect inventory. It's there to see, make sure that the product coming in is the same as the product going out, which is what, those scanners when you're leaving Target that beep if you didn't scan something out aren't there for your personal safety. It's there for the integrity of the product to make sure that they're not losing too much money on shoplifting or spillage or what have you. So I think it's very important to understand that just because you walk into a building and you see the cameras or you see the sign that says, hey, you're under 24-hour surveillance or, this blah, 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 blah. Those systems are not necessarily in place to be there to protect you. They are there to protect the product. Now, can they be then used in an investigative capacity after something has happened? Yes, absolutely. But it's also very important to realize that those systems are doing nothing to prevent harm from happening because most people who are planning on doing any kind of harm at that facility have either taken those risks into account or they simply don't care. So don't allow yourself to fall into the safety trap of overconfidence because you see all the security features, you see all that security theater and think it applies to your safety when actually it applies to the safety of the products you're there to buy.
It puts me in mind very much. I've been talking to my sons recently about media literacy. And one of the questions I ask them is, okay, when you read something, if you hear something, ask yourself, what's that person's job? Is that person's job to write a document that is then peer reviewed, to have holes knocked into it, and they will get fired if their results aren't accurate? Or is that person's job to piss off a certain portion of the political spectrum?
Or not just that.
Or is that person's job to make money?
Is it native advertising? Yeah. Is it designed to look like a news story where they're actually selling something else? I can't tell you how many times I'll be on the New York Times website, and you'll be reading this very legitimate Maggie Haberman review of what the the administration is doing or working on, or legislation that's going before Congress or the House. In the bottom, you'll see is this the safest thing you can use to prevent this kind of cancer? And then you'll click on it, and it's some pharmaceutical that someone paid to have there, so that it bleeds into the editorial. That, you know, there's a huge disconnect between opinion and fact. And in fact, there was a study that said like 85% of people can't, you know, differentiate between the two.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we see
and
this
what we were teaching this. I taught my sons to just like think about the person who created this content. What was their job?
Right.
And I think that dovetails exactly to what you're talking about with the security measures that we see in place. The person who wrote this security policy, what was his job? Was it to save lives, or was it to keep the company from getting sued? The person who installed those cameras, was his job to keep the area safer because there's a camera in place, or was it inventory control?
Right. Yeah. I mean, and to Jon Stewart's credit, when he was running The Daily Show, I think he was very outspoken that the people who were watching his show should be watching his show for entertainment and not watching it to be informed. Yes, all jokes are the truth in jest, but that, you know, he was on CNN, I think. Yeah, I think he was on CNN, and the hosts were like grounding him. Is like, how come you didn't interview this person harder? How come you didn't ask this guy the tougher questions? He's like, the lead into my show is hand puppets making crank phone calls. You're Crossfire. You're the ones who are supposed to be asking the tough questions. My job is to make my audience, you know, laugh at the stuff they learn on your show, but they're not supposed to be learning about these things on my show. They have to understand the premise for the joke to work, but they can't just simply think that my comedic take on this particular topic is the only, you know, the only true takeaway of that story. In order to understand something fully, we need to be able to passionately articulate both sides equally, because then and only then can we understand the nuance of spin that both sides of that story are trying to accomplish.
Absolutely. A friend of mine has frequently says that for 90% of things, if you can't explain the other side's point of view without making them sound like idiots, you probably don't understand the other side's point of view.
Right. Yeah. And don't allow like ideology to become your identity. Like I learn something new every day. I will like listen to Pod Save America, but then I will also listen to Rogan. I will listen to, you know, I try to make my media diet as healthy as my food intake, where I'm getting the vegetables and I'm getting the meats and I'm getting the starches and I'm getting the complex carbs. And every once in a while I'll have a little bit of sweets, but I'm not only eating sweets and I'm not going, you know, caveman diet. Or going, you know,
paleo or whatever
the I'm only eating meat for 60 days and you know, putting my spleen into failure. It's a delicate balance, and the more well-rounded our outlook and the more well-rounded our food and media diet can be, the more well-rounded as individuals we will be as well.
And bringing it back, just having that understanding of why people are doing the things they're doing helps us with the media and with understanding whether or not a given security measure in place is going to help us stay safe. Yeah.
And don't think that you're so important that everything in the world is for you. You know what I mean? Like Target did not put up those security cameras to keep Spencer Coursen safe when he goes to shop there. Target put up those cameras to keep their inventory protected, to possibly help keep their staff safe. And in the event that something bad should happen, they have the resources and the tools to help the investigators accomplish justice in a timely fashion. But much like we were talking about with the police being responsible for public safety, not personal safety, just because you see security systems, just because you see that an organization has a protection program in place, understand that they are there to protect their own interests first. And to the extent that them looking out for themselves can also help you, great. But don't think for a second that you're the priority.
Yeah, it's going to help you by happy coincidence, not by design.
Yeah.